On the evening of March the 3rd, 2021, 33-year-old Sarah Everard left a friend's house in Clapham, South London, and began what should have been an ordinary 50-minute walk home. Instead, her disappearance would trigger one of the most shocking criminal investigations in modern history, expose serious failures inside British policing, ignite nationwide conversations about women's safety, and reveal that the man responsible was not a stranger lurking in the shadows, but a serving Metropolitan Police officer trusted with enforcing the law. Sarah Everard was born in Surrey in 1987 and grew up in York, where friends and family described her as intelligent, funny, compassionate, kind, and just an all-round amazing person. She studied geography at Durham University before building a successful career in marketing and communications. At the time of her death, she worked for a digital media agency in London and lived in Brixton with a partner. Those who knew Sarah consistently described her as thoughtful, independent and cautious. In the years after her murder, that detail became especially haunting because Sarah had taken numerous safety precautions on the night that she disappeared. She wore bright clothing, she chose well-lit roads, she called her boyfriend during the walk home. She followed the kinds of safety advice women are routinely told to follow. That evening, Sarah had spent time at a friend's home near Clapham Common around 9 p.m. She left to walk home. CCTV footage later captured her moving through South London, calmly and normally. She stopped briefly at a shop, purchased some snacks and continued along the route towards Brixton. Investigators later reconstructed nearly every part of the journey that she took through extensive CCTV analysis. The footage became central to the investigation and later deeply unsettling to the public because viewers could actually watch Sarah during the final known moment of her life, entirely unaware that she was actually being targeted. At approximately 9:30 p.m, Sarah was seen on Ponders Road, and it was here that prosecutors believe she encountered Wayne Couzens, a serving officer with the Metropolitan Police's Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command. Couzens was 48 years old and had spent years working in law enforcement. His role included armed protection duties at high-profile government sites and embassies. To the public, he represented authority and safety. In reality, investigators would later uncover a man with a deeply disturbing history of misogyny, sexual aggression, and predatory behaviour that had repeatedly gone unchecked. According to prosecutors, Couzens used the COVID-19 lockdown regulations that were in force at the time to falsely arrest Sarah. Witnesses later reported seeing a woman matching Sarah's description standing beside a car in what appeared to be a police interaction. One witness recalled seeing the woman handcuffed because Couzens was a police officer and because lockdown rules had normalised police stop and question encounters. Nothing initially appeared suspicious. That detail would become one of the most horrifying aspects of this case. Sarah likely complied because she believed she was dealing with a legitimate police officer performing his duty. Investigators later discovered that Couzens had rented a white Vauxhall Astra specifically for the abduction. Automatic number plate recognition systems and traffic cameras tracked the vehicle, moving through London and eventually towards Kent. Phone records and CCTV footage placed Couzens along Sarah's route at critical times. Prosecutors argued that he had carefully planned the attack in advance. After abducting Sarah, Couzens drove more than 80 miles to rural Kent. During this journey, Sarah's mobile phone suddenly stopped transmitting data. Prosecutors later stated that Couzens raped and strangled her before transporting her body to a woodland area near Ashford. He then attempted to destroy evidence by burning her remains inside of a refrigerator he had purchased specifically for that purpose. Her body was ultimately hidden in a builder's bag and left in an isolated woods area. Back in London, Sarah's disappearance immediately alarmed her family and friends. When she failed to arrive home and stopped responding to messages, concerns then escalated really rapidly. Missing person appeals spread across social media. Police launched a major search operation involving helicopters, detectives, search dogs, and public appeals for CCTV footage. As the investigation intensified, fears spread across the UK, especially amongst women, who recognised the familiarity of Sarah's situation. She had not been walking through isolated alleyways late at night. She'd been on a relatively busy route through London while following standard safety precautions. The breakthrough came quickly once investigators examined traffic camera footage and mobile phone data. Detectives identified the rented Vauxhall Astra linked to Couzens. CCTV then placed him in the areas connected to Sarah's disappearance. Then further analysis showed his phone travelling from London to Kent during the critical time frame. When police officers searched Couzens' home and property in Kent, they uncovered deeply incriminating evidence. Officers found traces connected to Sarah and linked him to the woodland site where her remains were found. On March the 9th, 2021, Wayne Couzens was arrested. The revelation that the prime suspect was a serving Metropolitan Police officer sent shockwaves across Britain. Public trust in policing was immediately shaken. Questions exploded across news coverage and political debates. How could a man capable of such violence remain in law enforcement? Had warning signs been ignored? Were there any earlier complaints? As investigators dug deeper into Couzens' background, disturbing details began emerging. Colleagues actually nicknamed him the rapist years before Sarah's murder due to sexually inappropriate behaviour. He had allegedly exposed himself on multiple occasions. In fact, days before Sarah's disappearance, Couzens had reportedly been accused of indecent exposure at a fast food restaurant in Kent. Despite this, he remained an armed officer within the Metropolitan Police. Critics later argued that repeated institutional failures allowed a dangerous predator to continue operating inside law enforcement. The investigation also uncovered evidence suggesting Couzens had long consumed violent pornography and held deeply misogynistic attitudes towards women. Prosecutors portrayed him as a sexually motivated predator who used his police authority as a weapon. During interviews and court proceedings, Couzens initially attempted to minimise responsibility, later claiming criminal gangs had somehow forced him into kidnapping Sarah. Investigators rejected the story completely, viewing it as an obvious fabrication designed to avoid full accountability. On March the 10th, police discovered Sarah Everard's remains in a woodland area near Ashford, Kent. The confirmation devastated the country. Vigils and memorials appeared across Britain as thousands mourned Sarah and expressed anger over violence against women. But the public response became even more explosive days later during a vigil held at Clapham Common. The vigil was intended as a peaceful gathering where women could mourn Sarah and discuss fears around public safety. However, Metropolitan Police officers moved in to disperse crowds under COVID restrictions. Images soon spread worldwide showing female protesters pinned to the ground and handcuffed by police officers at an event honouring a woman murdered by a police officer. The optics were catastrophic for public trust. Critics accused police leadership of completely misunderstanding public anger and trauma. The vigil controversy transformed the case from a murder investigation into a wider national reckoning over policing, misogyny and women's safety in Britain. Women across the UK began sharing stories online about harassment, stalking, assault and fear during just everyday activities such as walking home at night. The phrase "she did everything right" became central to public discussion because Sarah had followed so many accepted safety precautions, yet was still targeted. The case challenged long-standing narratives suggesting women can prevent violence simply through cautious behaviour. In September 2021, Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to kidnapping, rape and murder. During sentencing hearings at the Old Bailey, prosecutors detailed the horrific nature of the crime and emphasised that the abuse of public trust involved. The judge described Couzens' actions as devastating, tragic and wholly brutal. Family impact statement revealed the immense emotional destruction caused by Sarah's death. His parents spoke about the unbearable reality of losing their daughter in such terrifying circumstances. Her sister described the permanent trauma inflicted on the family. The court also heard details about Couzens' planning. He had purchased burner phones, rented vehicles, and travelled through remote locations in preparation for the crime. Prosecutors argued the murder was premeditated and sexually motivated all along. In September 2021, Couzens received a whole life order, meaning he would never ever be released from prison. It marked one of the harshest sentences available under British law. But the story did not end with the conviction. Public outrage increasingly shifted towards the institutional accountability within the Metropolitan Police. Investigations revealed repeated missed opportunities to identify Couzens as dangerous. Critics argued that law enforcement agencies failed to take allegations of indecent exposure and misogynistic behaviour seriously enough. Independent reviews later concluded that systematic failures within policing cultures had contributed to this whole tragedy. The case also intensified broader debate about misogyny in British policing. Following Sarah's murder, additional scandals emerged involving officers accused of abuse, harassment, racism, and sexual violence. Public confidence in the Metropolitan Police declined, and sharply. Campaigners argued Sarah Everard's murder was not merely the act of one monster, but part of a wider culture that too often dismissed warning signs involving violence against women. For many people, the most disturbing aspect of the case remains the method Couzens allegedly used to control Sarah, impersonating legitimate police authority during a false arrest. It fundamentally shattered assumptions about trust and safety. Women across Britain openly discussed fears, not just of strangers, but of the systems and institutions meant to protect them. Sarah Everard's murder became a defining moment in modern British social history. It was not simply a criminal case. It evolved into a national conversation about gendered violence, institutional failure, police accountability, and public trust. Her death triggered policy discussions around police vetting procedures, officer misconduct reporting, and legal protections for women. Schools, workplaces, media organisations, and government officials all became part of a wider debate over misogyny and public safety. Even years later, Sarah's name remains symbolic across the UK. Murals, memorials, campaigns, and protests continue to reference her case as a turning point in awareness surrounding violence against women. What began as the disappearance of one woman walking home from a friend's house ultimately exposed profound societal fears and institutional failures far beyond a single crime scene. And perhaps this is why the case continues to resonate so deeply. Sarah Everard was not behaving recklessly. She was not isolated in a remote area. She was simply walking home through London at night, just doing what millions of people do every single day. The man who stopped her was not visibly suspicious or lurking in darkness. He was a police officer carrying the authority of the state itself. Now that reality transformed the case from a tragic murder into one of the most disturbing breaches of public trust in modern British criminal history. And as ever, my thoughts go out to the families and anyone affected by this crime.